Hello, everyone. Welcome. So I'm going to start like I usually do for these monthly recaps, where I'm going to read off the featured stories. Just a reminder, this is the first month where every single story that is featured in the monthly will receive a medallion because we've changed the setup so that only the monthly recap stories receive a medallion, not the weekly ones, just to give myself a bit of a break. Um, so just want to say that on the outset in case there's some confusion. Okay, so these are, and then following this, I'm going to invite Mr. Troy Ford on, and he and I are going to chat for a bit about his latest release and a couple of other things. So, without further ado, here is the monthly recap for stories written between May 3rd to May 30th, 2025. And there are 22, by the way. So there are 22 stories that are going to be featured that I'm going to read off right now. Micro slash flash fiction, Boats Against the Current, written by Scott McLeod of Son of Ugly. Strange Man in the Park, written by Ash of Quills and Shadows. How to Steal from Your Elderly Neighbor, written by Bree Heron of Writing on a Whim. The Belt Buckle, written by Marion L. Thorpe of History, Landscape, Birds, and Stories. Short story, I Let the Devil In, written by St. Lazare of St. Lazare Writer. The Last Confession of Penelope Foote, written by S. E. Reed of Tailbones. Gray Eyes, written by Ali Lovat of My Literature and Life. Objectionable Conduct, written by Terry A. Fries of Thin Air Fiction. Dyad, written by John T. and Sandalore Sykes. The Last Sermon of Nathaniel Creed, written by The Gay Void of The Gay Void. A Sudden Appearance of Angels, written by Eli Lichtstein of Hebrew Horror. Derek Patel's Last Entrance, written by Anne Marie Hubert of Anne Marie's Stories. Gobla, written by William Pauley III of Some Flux. Kick Drum Passing Strangers, written by Ben Wakeman of Catch and Release. The Forester and the Child, written by Ian Dunmore of Dunmore Dispatch. Pillow Talk, written by Zachary San Martin of The Literary Ledger. Welcome to the Jungle, written by E.J. Trask of Age of Aquarius. Short Serial, Sticks and Stones Part 1, written by Sean Brooks of Black Sun Books. Serial, Revenge Gambit, the Time Family Series Prologue, written by Patrick Stark of the Time Family Novel Series. The Sibyllid, the Pseudologue, written by Thaddeus Thomas of the Literary Salon with Thaddeus Thomas. Moonthread, chapters 1 through 3, read by Anthony Lee Phillips of Anthony Writes Fantasy. Symbols of Resistance, The Shift, Agents of Chaos, Episode 5, written by S. L. Stallings of Ghost Stories. Whew, that's 22. That was a lot. Okay, so like I said, those 22 stories, you should be able to find the medallions for those when I send this email out later today. Um, and now I'm going to take a sip of my water. Um, oh, okay. I feel like I always get a little bit nervous right when I'm about to do one of these interviews. So I like to get myself as prepared as I possibly can. Wrong button. Okay. I am going to now invite Mr. Troy Ford. Mr. Troy. Here we go. Okay.
Oh,
Hello.
how are you?
Oh, I'm great.
That was an illustrious list of top in fiction today.
I know. And I gotta say that I'm glad that I did the hard thing of cutting back. And because I used to do that every week. And I knew my voice would just not make it at a certain point of of reading off, 20 names and titles and people's names every week. It was getting to be a lot. And so I had to
It's
say,
what you do.
I know I set myself up for that, that I said every week I'm gonna come on here and I'm gonna be live and excited and energetic and read. And then I was like, guys, I'm getting burnt out. Like it's a lot. I don't think you understand the level. I mean, it's hard enough finding the stories, but then having to come on and read them. I know that everyone loved when I did it. You love hearing your name, you love hearing, but it's a lot. So I felt like doing it once a month gives it a bit more credence. Um, that only once a month I'm going to say your name. So if you want that to happen, get out there and write
Exactly.
work.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
okay, so let's set that aside. Thank you, first of all, for coming on. I'm so excited. I reached out to you
Thank you.
immediately and I said, "Can I have you on? Would you mind?"
I would love it.
But then I've seen you running the gamut of all of these interviews. So I've got to say, preemptively, give a bit of a preamble here for myself. That I feel like that puts a lot of pressure. I know you didn't mean to, but a lot of pressure on me to perform because it's like you're coming up after the 30 interviews you've done and all the things you've said, and now it's on me to find something new and interesting for us to talk about so that it doesn't feel like for you like you're just rehashing it all over
It's
again.
hey, it's on me as well. It's absolutely on. It's this is a joint venture of
Right.
futility.
So I almost feel like I've had a little bit of extra
Just
good job,
something's happening.
right? Like that's all you talk about, that's all you've been saying. Um, are you there? Sorry. Okay,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
back. I think you
It froze for a second.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm like, okay, I do want you to talk about Lamb. That's why you're here. So I would like you to introduce yourself, introduce your book that did just officially release, I think, yesterday.
Yep.
But I do have a few other things that I would love for us to talk about that isn't Lamb related, but is Mr. Troy Ford related. So
Okay.
it's more about you, but it's not so much about the book. So I don't know if it's my instability that's causing the freezing. I hope it isn't, but we'll see. So if you could just, um, you know, tell us about yourself, tell us about Lamb that just came out yesterday, and then we can talk about some other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I have it here. Here's the cover of my book. Oops. Lamb, a novel and snapshot by Troy Ford. I love the cover. This guy named David Wojo, he goes by David Wojo, actually designs that
Yeah.
for me. And and yeah, so it came out yesterday, and it's the story of two friends from high school, and they're coming of age. They went to sort of an all boys private school, and then they both of them uh, immigrated to the Bay Area after that, and went to college, and then kind of went in different directions. One of them became like a financial services professional, and Lamb did not. Was very much an aimless kind of guy, always looking, never finding. and so it's introduced at the very beginning of the book, so it's not really a spoiler to say that he disappears. On the eve of their moving in together, they're about 30 years old. They signed the lease. Lamb even moved his clothes and his papers and his journals and all of his boxes into the apartment and then just disappeared. And so when the narrator D arrives in San Francisco from having lived in Texas for a year, his friend is not there, and he's not sharing an apartment, but just it's just has an apartment on his own, and then again, not a spoiler to say that 3 years after that, he gets a notice from their high school that Lamb has died. And so the book is exploring their life together in high school, in their 20s, all through their party days, their salad days, up until Lamb's disappearance, through the journals, the letters that they wrote to each other, short stories that Lamb wrote, and you get a picture of this character, both characters of two people that cared very much about each other, were very dear friends, but one of them just kind of went in a downward spiral, and so that's the essence of Lamb, basically.
Right.
Literary fiction, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, if you want to label it that, sure.
Eh, contemporary. I never say literary fiction anymore. It seems to be the
It sounds so highbrow when you say literary fiction, doesn't
I
it?
know, and it's
It
not,
it
it
gives it this
yeah,
sense of like, oh, I have to be very well educated then to be able to get it. It's got this you've got some deeper meaning when you say literary fiction. It's almost a bit frightening. You seem so
a little bit.
highbrow, is that what
No,
it is?
no, I'm not. Very
I
not.
mean, you say that and then you've got that cover that's very punk rock. So it's like, okay.
Exactly. No, no, I should have known better. I I actually decided to banish the phrase literary fiction from my vocabulary a couple years ago. So I don't even know why I just said that. But what did I say? Contemporary. We'll say
Contemporary.
contemporary gay
Yes.
fiction. Yeah.
Very, very new age, new adult, or however. There's so many new categories now for genre, fiction, or not. And it's just like I don't know. It's a book. It's really good. Read it, is what I say.
Yeah. Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you decide how you feel about it in the end. So I'm just so excited that you serialized it on Substack and then you decide
Mhm.
to bring it to the masses and publish it. And I'm always so fascinated by when people make that it's a bold choice to serialize, but it's an even bolder choice to say I'm going to now publish it. And taking from that, I wanted to actually talk about two other aspects. You really have, I feel like, three other avenues that you do within Substack, but I'm going to set QStack aside for a second because I do want to delve deeper into what you have, which is the Books We Love Club, and then you also have The Road to Published. And I love those two kind of uh, pedestals that you have here because they're very distinct and very unique. And they're two of my favorite things because they talk about publishing in two very different ways. And so the first one being the Books We Love Club. Like, where did that desire come from? Just not for you to love books, but for you to want to open that to other people to tell you about the books they love and why they love either the writer, the book specifically. Like, what is it about that? Where did that come from?
Well, I really love the idea of a book club, and
And
I haven't been in a
it's different from your regular kind of book club because when you think of a book club, you think here's a book and we're all going to
yeah.
come together every week and we're going to read it and discuss different chapters, right? That's what I think of as a book club. And this is so different and so unique, but so awesome because it's not what you think of when you think of a book club.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, actually, that's one of the thing, the tagline of the Books We Love Club is, the book club you don't even have to read the book to
Right.
enjoy,
Right.
because and I have read, I've read quite a few of them at this point, or had already read, and I was, so happy to see when people chose them. But I was really interested. God, I'll tell you what, with with getting a book published, with like finding comps and keeping up with the literary landscape and Publishers Weekly, and the hot deals that people made with publishers this week, and so forth and so on, and then all of the book clubs that are always just picking up, the latest summer read, the latest beach read, this, that, the other thing, or whatever. I personally, I find it rather overwhelming, you
Yeah.
know, trying to keep up with all of the books that are being published,
Well,
mine
especially
included.
when you hear stats of people saying there were 12,000 books published each week or some weird number. And
Yeah,
you
yeah,
say that to yourself and it's like, I don't even like where would I even see 12,000 books, let alone try to
yeah.
think that there are 12,000, and that's why you find people niche down so much and they say, well, I like this writer. And when this writer publishes a book, I buy it and I read it because to try to broaden yourself to say, I'm willing to try something new, the floodgates are ridiculous. You could end up down a rabbit hole that you
Sorry.
didn't even know existed,
Yeah,
right? So I
yeah,
love the idea of, tell me about a book you read 30, 40 years ago that you really loved and that stuck with you and that you still think about and it has pride of place on your bookshelf. And regardless of the new hot it thing, you can turn to that book and be like, oh, the nostalgia of reading that book, of just seeing it on the shelf, of seeing the different covers over time and buying that
oh yeah,
30th anniversary special edition, you know, because I'm all
totally.
about the special editions of books. I love it.
Yeah,
So that's why I'm like, oh yeah, there are some books that I just really love and I cherish.
yeah. Well, I think you're gonna have to do an episode of the Books We Love Club at some point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was really like, lots of people are already doing, what's the latest, what's the greatest, book club. And I just thought, wouldn't it be nice to invite people to talk about, not the latest thing they read, but the thing that they've read and reread many times over the years, and I have a few of those.
Yeah.
And those are the books that you talk about. Those are the books that you think about, and you go back to as almost like comfort food in a way. I mean, there was probably about a 30-year period where I reread Lord of the Rings every year,
Right.
and
Oh, you're
and
one
it
of
just
those you're one of those guys who breezes through the 1,000-page book and like it's nothing, and you're like, "Yeah, every year I sit down and I reread
it's
Lord of the
usually,
Rings."
what it is. It's usually when I'm sick. I'll get sick. I'll be like, finally, I have to just, stop.
Right,
Stop everything, get in bed, pull the covers up, and then it's like, what do I, how do I deal with this? And that's inevitably when I go back to, the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring,
right. And
and
do you do ebook? Do you like the tactile paper, hardcover, paperback? What's the preference?
I've been more and more recently. I've been doing ebooks, but just because we moved to Europe, and instead of, I had like, I think I had 5 bookcases full of books, before we moved, and every single one of them got carted down to the Little Free Book Library over the course of several months, and I gave them all away except for
Right,
one box of most precious things that I just couldn't imagine living without. And now I just have the one bookshelf now. And we're imagining possibly moving again. So I don't want to fill up my boxes of books and things like that. So I go with ebooks now. But yeah, so the Books We Love Club is just an opportunity for people, and it's been really interesting too, because like I got Eleanor Anstruther did the version where she said, "Well, I don't love James Joyce's Ulysses," and that was a hoot and a half. I mean, that was a
right.
a great one.
To talk about one
Uh,
I don't love,
yeah, yeah, and
and here's
and
why.
exactly, exactly, just some really good ones. Raymond Carver. I had never read any Raymond Carver before. Tom Pendergast brought up what we talk about when we talk about love, and I'd heard it, but I just didn't know what it was or who he was or whatever. You know, like a name that you've heard, but you just
Right.
never quite get to the point where you look it up and find out what it's all about or whatever. So I've really enjoyed that. And it doesn't have to be, you know, classic books, and very often it's not kind of the classics that people necessarily think of. So, for example, I just did the last month's edition, which was "O Caledonia" by Elspeth Barker, and that's about 30 years old. So it's not a super old book, but it's a book I've already just having discovered it about 3 years ago now, I've read it 3 times, and it is just so, you know, it's so I read my read my glowing, you know, review of it on Ford Knows. It's just, it wormed its way into my heart almost immediately. I read it, like, back to back right away, and then I
So is the format that a person, like, tells you what their book would be, and then you read it and review it? Or is it that they write a review on why they love it? Like, what does that
yeah,
format look like? And if it is
yeah, no,
like that,
they
maybe it should be, like, I tell you what book I like, you probably never read it, and now you have to go read it and review it.
that's a good yeah, I don't know that I have it that quite in me, honestly. No, I invite the people to write the review. Tell us why you love this book. What's so special about it that you keep going back to it, and
Yeah.
why? And, you know, it's like I say, I don't really have a lot of parameters. It's like I say, 1 to 2K words, up to you. You know, you pick the book. The only thing I've kind of decided in the last month or so was that I'm actively asking people to try and choose women or BIPOC or, you know, other marginalized, queer, or whatever characters, because I realized after the first 8 months, 9 months, they were all men. And I was like, that's interesting. Even though,
It's rare, I was trying not to go there, but let's go there for a second because sometimes I will say I don't notice that as a queer black woman, there are many times where people ask me like, how do I feel in certain social situations or certain other situations, and I'll go back all the way to college where unless someone brings it up, I don't notice that I'm the only black person in the classroom. Where it's like, "Oh,
mm,
yeah, let me look around." Until that teacher that day happened to say, happened to bring up affirmative action for reasons I don't even remember at the time. And it just so happened that I wasn't the only black student in the classroom, there was another. And again, I don't like, I don't it's not that I don't see race or I don't see color, but it's not the thing that I'm looking for whenever I enter a room. I'm, like, gonna stop and do a head count and see, "Oh, I'm the only black person in this room," right? So, when that came up and the other student, she was a female as well, said, and very proudly, "I am here because of affirmative action." I was blown away. I said, "Whoa,"
mm,
because I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I don't know about you, but I'm here because I'm an A student." And that, you know what I mean? Like there was that moment, that great divide of like, I'm proud that regardless of my schooling, my whatever, I'm here because I'm black. And then there was the black student who said, race had nothing to do with it. I'm here because I'm fucking smart. Like, let's get it straight here. Like, you're not gonna tell me that the reason why I'm sitting here is because I'm black and the school, chose me for that reason. But anyway, so whenever I see, but now I start to see those things. Like, I can't even remember what literary something made a huge announcement to say, here are the judges or something, and they had a page and everyone went to the page and they stupidly left the comments open, and so the comments were flooded saying, well, so much for black people. And I went back up to the pictures and I said, "Oh my god, they're right. There isn't one black person," and they're trying to say how they're going to represent, like they're representing and I can't remember what the website was or who the organization was that had all these judges, and it was just I don't notice those things, but now I'm paying attention and it's like, yeah, that's missing. Why is that missing today? Like why
Yeah.
could you not find a female? Could you not find a black person or Asian, the Pacific Islander? I don't know. Like whatever. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and I do try to stop and think. And it's hard for me to do because I'm just going through. Like I don't have time to stop and look and make sure, but that is important to stop and look and make sure because before you know it, someone is going to say, "Hey, Troy, how could you have Q-Stack and you don't have any, like you've been doing this for 8 months now. What's the deal?" Like,
Yeah,
you,
yeah. No, I was kind of
you know
like,
what I mean?
holy shit, how did this happen?
And
Like,
you don't want someone else to point it out to you and be like, "Oh shoot, I didn't even think." Like, yeah, you're right. Oh, let me quickly find someone to fill this gap that's missing clearly. But it's
yeah,
true,
yeah.
unless you're
Well,
noticing, and it's what's so crazy is my wife will be the first one because she runs a horror contest, a horror screenwriting contest, and she's very like adamant, like I've got to find the winner has to be a woman. It has to be a black person. Like are they gay? Let me look them up and see what their sexuality. And I'm like, seriously, like who cares? But she really cares. She's like, no, I have to make sure that we are representing. This is not going to be all white everything, all male everything. Like there's got to be representation, and I give her so much props for that because I'm just like, if you can't force, I don't know how you feel about this, where you can't force the issue. Like you can't, like if people aren't reading black authors, how do you force them to read black authors? If people of a certain race or a certain gender aren't entering the contests, so when you try to pick the winner or the top 3 or the top 10, you're literally cherry picking now to try and find the minority. Um, like what do you
That's
do?
tough.
Like
Yeah.
it's and I ask her that all the time, and I know that one of the things she will do is she'll go to those groups and those marginalized groups and say, "Here's a free entry. So you can free. Like I want gay people, I want
Yeah.
black women, I want women to enter. So how do I get you to enter? I give you a free entry, and like there's only but so much hand holding and like forcing up the rung you can do.
Yeah.
Where at some
but
point you
what
have to do
about
it yourself.
yeah, but what about also too? I mean, there's a lot of contests. For example, I'm actually going out now and looking for. I've got a whole spreadsheet full of like contest awards, whatever that I'm submitting LAM for,
That's
and some of them yeah. And some of them are like, are blind. They're anonymous entries. You get, I guess they just put a number on your manuscript or whatever. So, and unless unless the subject matter is very obviously, whatever your demographic is, but
right.
even then, you don't necessarily know that a queer person has necessarily written a queer story or whatever. You know what I mean? So I don't know. So
Yeah,
but I think, yeah,
it's a
it's a touchy
tough.
subject.
It is very touchy, and I feel bad for the organizers of those things because they are going to be the first one to get targeted of like, well, why didn't you and why isn't there? And this is clearly missing. And it's like, well, you want to be anonymous, right? Like you said, you want, but then if you're anonymous and you accidentally find out all of your winners are white males, then you're
Mm.
screwed. And you're like, oh shit, someone's gonna notice. And they're gonna say, what happened here? And it's like, well, they were the best. What do you want me to do? Everyone else didn't enter. It's like it's one of
I
those,
think you have
and
to
I
stand
hate to
by
bring
it.
this up with you, but as a gay man, as a gay woman, I feel like you can't not talk about the
Yeah.
elephant in the room here of like this is an issue and I understand it's an issue. And so while I try to be um I don't want to say Switzerland or oblivious to it. I understand what it is. Like I don't want to seem um like it's all about race, it's all about gender, it's all about sexuality. I just want to love fiction and I want to raise up fiction and the fiction community as a whole. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to raise someone up or only raise someone up because they happen to be Black or that they happen to be a white male or they happen to be this. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to be unbiased and biased at the same time. Like I
Yeah.
have to I
Yeah.
have to try to set parameters without setting parameters, without upsetting everyone, without causing a rift, and I know with Top and Fiction, I feel like I set myself up for it's an everyone thing, but I also need to look out for the little guy of like, let me see what I can do to help you too, and help you not feel left out and help you feel like
Yeah. Yeah.
we're all in this
Yeah.
together. And I know with you with QStack, that's one of the things you're um, advocating to do for the queer community to just raise everyone up um, and leave no
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
behind.
Yeah. And I've tried very, very consciously. Fortunately, I'm finding like because QStack is besides the directory. So there's the directory of all of the different queer Substacks out there, but then there's the platform aspect of it, which is that basically all of the content on QStack is other people's writing. I've written very, very few, only just kind of, news and announcements and the occasional post about this, that, the other thing. But for the most part, every QStack post focuses on somebody and their writing, and whether it's poetry, short story, nonfiction, and so forth. And I've tried very hard to make sure there's a mix of genders, of sexualities, of uh, uh, trans people are absolutely included. I've actually you know I've been very vocal about that. It is a community that welcomes trans people and does not welcome any kind of of rhetoric that implies that there is something wrong with trans people or whatever. So and I've tried as much as possible to include all of those voices on
Right.
QStack. So yeah, and you just have to work at it, I guess. I mean, yeah, if there was an award, or there was I mean, the Oscars for the most, it's a very similar situation. They always get lambasted every year for not having, a wide representation of
Right.
people of
Right.
different color, genders,
Yeah.
whatever.
And I never and like I said, I never think about that before, like how many Black women are going live on Substack and doing interviews and discussions. I don't know. There probably are many. I'm not saying I'm following everyone to know who's going live and what's going on in other communities. I can only speak to the fiction community, right? And so I'm trying to make it a place where you're seeing all kinds of people and you're hearing from all kinds of voices. Now that we have this ability to go live and to have these kind of conversations, I want more people to feel comfortable to come on and see that it's a cool happening thing to do and it's a fun time. And so you should do it. And I'm constantly, slipping into I don't know how many people's DMs on a regular basis to say, hey, you want to come on with me and talk?
Yeah.
It's not too difficult, I don't think. Um, but let's pivot a little bit because I don't want to go down a road of just talking about this with you. It just so happens that I'm like, oh, I can't not talk about this stuff because it's there. And I don't try to be like all like I don't want people to see me as my labels. Just I'm just a person who happens to be on here talking to you and whether I'm gay or straight, black or white, a woman or not, but I can't not be those things at the same time as well. I can't not speak to the fact that it is very clear to me that there needs to be more fiction writers making themselves known as being all of the labels that they are, but more than that. Like I'm more than the labels that I am. Um,
Yeah.
and I hope that I don't push too much of a narrative as well. Like I don't want to just be like, yes, I'm black, I'm gay, I'm a woman. Yeah. Especially during Pride Month. It's like I have to be, right? Like where's my rainbow stuff? I don't know. I feel like this if there's ever a month that you need to just be all the rainbows, this is it. Um, and I don't have anything,
Exactly.
so that's terrible. But let's talk about and I don't I'm too old, I think. That's the other thing. I feel like I've reached an age in my life where I'm not going to the parades. I'm not like I can't. I did it in my youth,
Yeah,
right? And so it's the same now every year. I don't need to do it anymore. I went to like every year in June I would go to like 8 different parades, go to all the different states and ugh, I can't. I can't with the leather and the dykes on bikes and it's too much. It's too much. I'm tired. Just thinking about it exhausts me. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Well, and for introverts, pride is such a kind of a mixed bag for an introvert like me, for example. You know what I mean? Because it's just like I get so overwhelmed with, I mean, I love the Dyson bikes. I would love to, ride on one of
It's
them.
cool, in the moment when you're like in your 20s and you're out there and I've been to the parades where they do it exclusively at night and so it's cool to see and it's an amazing, you know, I've been to one too many, I think, and I'm good
Maybe
now.
so.
Like I
Maybe
don't,
so.
maybe when my son gets older, I might take him just so he can experience what going to that kind of a parade is like, because it is very different from your normal Thanksgiving Day parade or something. But it's definitely not the same. It's a very
Yeah,
unique experience to go to one, but right now
yeah.
I'm too old. And I know you're laughing at me because you're like, how old could you be? I'm way older than you. Okay, okay, Troy, sure, sure. I'm old, all right. I'm not
Older than
the
me, is that what you're saying?
no, no, no. This is the year I was born. This is the actual year I was born, so no, I'm not older than you.
No.
I'm an 80s baby. Okay, so Road to Published. I was actually just before we got on this because I was like, okay, I want things to talk about outside of Lamb. And so I was reading through most of your Road to Published posts, and I love them because the last one especially, you talk about all of the people who self-published. Um, and I didn't know all of those amazing like classic what we consider now to be classic writers who self-published. I know a lot about the people who serialized because I'm really interested in serialization. So, I find it so fascinating that you have people like Charles Dickens who, you know, they serialized all of their work. And then other classic authors back then. And the reasons are different than today, obviously, as to why you would self-publish back then or why you would serialize. It was just cheaper and you could reach more people was the crux of it. I mean, there were other reasons as well, but that's the biggie is, you know, if you tried to, most publishing houses, it costs too much to publish, let alone to sell. And so people only the rich could afford to buy a book. So if you wanted
Right,
to reach the laborer who could only afford to buy the penny magazine or newspaper, then you had
right,
to serialize, and that's how, you got more people to read your work, let alone the people who were literate and who couldn't read at all. So there was
right.
that issue as well. Not everyone could read back then because to read was a sin. But anyway, I'm getting too into the weeds now. Because I've been reading a lot about serialization and what that was like and how people would gather in people's houses because if you didn't know how to read or if you couldn't afford the book, you instead of gathering around a TV or gathering around a radio as time passed, before there was radio and before there were TV, people actually gathered in the living room and you brought out the one book that you could afford and one person would stand in front of and they would read it. And so that was a thing. Like you heard a book being read to you out loud, which I think is so fascinating, which is why I did the sociable that one time because it's like, oh my God, I love the idea of people gathering and you just read your story. You
Yeah,
know, you don't have to do it around a campfire. But anyway,
yeah.
the roads are published.
I notice a lot of those are behind a paywall. So is there a reason why some are free, some are not? Like what your purpose was with the Road to Published, is it specific to you, or you're just kind of doing research on what that's like, and the positives and negatives to self-publish versus traditional?
So I imagined Road to Published, so the Road to Published is basically, sort of less of a how to and more of a this was my journey. This was what I've discovered over, the course of many, many years, and then more recently, finally writing a book, finishing a book, writing another book, serializing it, and now publishing it, and all of the steps in that process, how to overcome writer's block, which I did, how to write a query letter. I mean, I don't necessarily want to try and teach people how to do those things because there are so many already out there that are
Right,
that are
right,
doing that. That's fine. And there's lots of disagreement about, this, that, the other thing. So I'm not trying to say, that I'm the 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 person to teach you how to do these things, you know what I mean? But I do have the insights of having done it myself now. And so that's what I wanted to share. Now, originally, I had imagined it as kind of I had not up to that point put anything behind a paywall. And I've done that deliberately in part because I wanted to, keep it open and I wanted people to come in. But I thought that perhaps the going a little bit deeper and going a little bit more into the weeds of writing fiction might not be exactly the demographic of my newsletter overall, and so I decided that as kind of a as a as a thank you for people that were paying for subscriptions, that I would put some of those, not all of them, but some of them behind the paywall and make it kind of like this is a bonus material, whatever. Um, and I'm now, if I'm being honest, I'm now sort of questioning that a little bit. Not that I've gotten some really good engagement, and I've really been happy with that, but I'm starting to feel like, I'm not sure I wanna keep anything behind a paywall. QStack also has, at the moment, nothing behind a paywall as well, and so I'm not sure how I feel in the end. I know people do it sometimes, to try and grow and, make more money and paid subscriptions and stuff like that. But I'm finding that that's not necessarily, that's not really my goal, and especially for Ford knows for my personal Substack. Um, so I'm thinking about this last of the five. I think I've done five or six now. Five of the five posts I've done for Road to Published, two of them have been open and free for everyone because I really wanted to, I would have wanted everybody to hear, about these issues and so forth. So
right.
I'm actually thinking about taking them all out from behind the paywall and just making them all free going forward. Thinking very strongly about doing that. And because, if somebody is out there thinking, well, what is it like to break through writer's block? What is it like to get through that first rough draft and starting to go back and edit through it? What's it like to query agents? 60 agents I queried for my first book, and and all that stuff. And I think I've really enjoyed writing the articles. I'm trying to do it a little bit more in depth, that less kind of like just, stream of consciousness off the top of my head kind of stuff, and actually put some research into it and stuff as kind of maybe practice to start submitting more widely outside of Substack to, other publications and stuff like that. So it's been kind of practice to start doing that. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to redefine how I see and use Substack. Like I'm starting to see it for something differently than I am, and not to get too much into it because I'm giving a top in fiction State of the Union in July that's going to more give explain what I mean by that. But I'm seeing it more as a place of community building and
Hmm.
less as a place of readership building. And so from that regard, I do know that there are two kinds of people on Substack. There are the guides and there are the gurus. So um, the gurus are the ones, that they're like, I'm going to teach you how to make $50,000 a month from your Substack. And I'm, like I've got all the answers. Just pay me a monthly subscription. Like those are the gurus that
Yeah.
they have all the answers, and all you have to do is follow these 12 simple steps. But then there are, I think, people like you and I who are the guides, where it's like, look, this is my journey. This is what I did. This is where I failed. This is where I succeeded. Follow it if you want, don't follow it. It's less about this is the steps that you must take to get where I am, because I mean, but there is someone behind us who isn't wherever we are right now. And so, yeah, they might need to know a little bit just to get them up here. And then you and I know there are people ahead of us who we look at and we're like, oh man, I wish I had, that much engagement or that many followers or subscribers or whatever the case may be, paid or otherwise. That's irrelevant, really. But there's always going to be someone two steps ahead and two steps behind. And so I always think it's important to document, if you will, your journey, and to share it with others and let people see what your journey was like, and lament and say, oh, I wish I had a journey like Mr. Troy Ford with his cool book cover and his, latest published release. And maybe I can do that. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I can have release a book. All he did was serialize it on Substack, and he woke up one day and said, I'm going to publish it. And he did. Wow.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not it's not there aren't the gates that used to be to exist. There aren't all these hurdles you need to jump. Like, yes, there are different hurdles now. The hurdles aren't to get to the top 5, big 5 publishers. It's different hurdles of, formatting it yourself, getting a cover artist, doing the editing, going on KDP or whatever you use to plug in all the information, knowing how to get your ISBN, paying for that. Like those are the hurdles now, but they're
Mhm.
not insurmountable that you can't do it too. Like anyone who wants to do it can do it. And I really want to try to show. That's why I always want to have someone on who's just published something, especially if they've just serialized it on Substack, because I want that to be the marching orders for Top and Fiction. Is that, yes, I want to promote and share that you're writing fiction and that you're doing the bold thing to share it on Substack, but I want you to see what the next step could be if you wanted it to be that, which is
Exactly.
there is nothing stopping you from now taking what you just serialized, what you just shared, making a collection, if it's just short stories, publishing it, putting it out
Totally.
there. Let me talk to you. Let's talk about it. Let's let people know this amazing thing that you just did, that you're now able to hold it in your hands or read it on your tablet, whatever. I just think that's so.
It is. It is. You froze a little bit there.
Sorry, you
There, you're
You
back.
agree? Okay. Yeah, like I'm seeing Substack as this gathering place for all of us
Yeah.
fiction
Yeah. Yeah.
writers. Yes, of course, there are readers here. I'm not saying there aren't readers here who aren't writers. Yes, there are, but from my little siloed landscape of what I've built on Substack Notes and who I'm following and who I'm subscribed to, for me, I feel like the landscape of Substack is where all of the writers are gathering, of fiction writers, and the next logical step is to publish your work and push it outside of the Substack walls. There are clear walls of Substack, and some of us peek over it and peek through the hedge and say, "Oh yeah, there's things happening out there." I don't know. I like it's safe here. It's nice here. I'm
But
growing here.
there's
There's
enough
a lot of
variety,
there's a
though, you know?
safety net, here
Yeah.
that I'm just
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to go out there, but I think it's time. And when I say out there, I mean something as simple as, do you have a website outside of Substack where people are able to push a button and buy your book? Or are they having to literally come into Substack before they even see you have a book to see your link to click on it to go buy it? You know what I mean? Like there are things you can do that you have to go outside of Substack in order to gain that traction. You know, everyone hates Instagram and they hate TikTok and they hate X. And I'm not saying that you should go over there. I hate them just as much as you do. They're not on my phone. I'm not on Reddit. I'm not in any of those places. But there are different things that can be done, you know, BookBub, I don't know, whatever it is to get your work to go beyond the beautiful garden wall that Substack has created for us.
I think of Substack very much as like a writer incubator, you know.
Yeah.
Like this is where you're going to find sort of some of the most optimal conditions. You've got a community, you've got a readership, you know. It takes a while sometimes to kind of get going. But there's such a, you know, overall there's so much less trolling and toxicity on
There is.
Substack
And that's why it's
that
so
you can
safe
do
and
that.
cozy. It's so where
Yeah.
you can cook, like you can cook here. You don't have to feel like, oh, maybe I can't write that. Oh, maybe I can't say that. Maybe I can't share that. There's a lot of that in the other
Mhm.
places that I mentioned. Where here, it's like we want you to say that. We want you to talk about it, to put it out there because then other people will latch on and there's so many different events, writing events and different social gatherings that
Mhm.
happen simply because someone decided to write a note and say, I've been thinking about doing X. And then so many people come in and say, oh, that's so cool. Yes, let's do that. And then before you know it, a thing happens and a bunch of people are participating and it's like, wow, that's kind of awesome. You know, like
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
how easy and quickly was it for you to say you wanted to do your, you know, the Books We Love Club before you probably had people coming to you to say, "Oh, I'd love to tell you the book of." Like, did you have to go finding people or did people come to you, do you find?
No, I've actually had to reach out to people for the most part. In fact, of the fun, it's only been going for 9 months or so now. So, but only one person has actually reached out. I'm 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 always surprised at how often people, you know, don't reach out. And I think this isn't specific to me, but I think there's a real fear in a lot of ways. You know, it's uh people are afraid to say, you know, oh, I want to collaborate with you. I want to do
Right.
something with you. You know, and so my kind of suggestion to, you know, to people who, you know, are feeling that way, and to my own self, because you know, even for example with QStack, with the, you know, the news and announcements and so forth, you know, most of the things that I put on in the news and announcements are things that I have gone out and found myself
Right.
because
And you
people
know
are
what?
just not reaching out, you know?
I will say I intentionally did not come to you to say add me to the Q stack.
Mm.
Intentionally. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't I think
You're
it
on there though,
wasn't
right?
I yes, I am because you put me on there. And
Yes. That's
when you
that's
say
what I
that you
thought.
have to go out and find people, yes, I can see why because I don't follow my own advice, which is you should just go and say
Do it.
something, right?
Take
Um,
every opportunity.
and I think the same thing is I think that there's this the library. I'm sure you're familiar with the library that and you know
Instamoto.
like I yeah like I just there's something where I feel like, "Oh, that's not f it wasn't built for me, so I'm not going to say you should add." I don't wanna take away from someone else who might really need it because they feel like because of their sexuality, because of whatever, that they're not being seen. And so, in many ways, when you create a Q stack, I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." But at the same time, I was like, "Well, I think I'm doing all right." Like, I don't think I need the boost that that might get or the eyes on me that that might bring. So there was something where I just felt like I don't need to tell him, you know, "Hey, you better add me to your you better add me to your Q stack." Don't you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like, I don't I and
yeah,
I don't know why, but there was just something about it where I just said, "Oh, you know, like, when I see that someone is building something and I feel like I fit in that box that they've just created, that stack or whatever, my inclination is like, I don't know if they built that for me, so while I might
Yeah.
fit the parameters, it's all
Yeah.
right. I don't need it. I'm doing okay. I've got subscribers. I've got interactions. I'm communing with my people on Notes, so I don't really need to, be so
There's something I
showboaty
think
about it.
there's something very, I don't know if this is American per se, that kind of go it alone, do it yourself, pull yourself up by the bootstraps or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
There is something very vulnerable about reaching out to someone and say, I want to be part of your club or I want to be part of
Right.
your community. You know what I mean? It doesn't even have to necessarily be like, I need help, but there is definitely, there's a it's not the entrepreneurial, spirit to, be a joiner. Instead it's like create your own thing, be your own boss, and be the hero to your own story, as opposed to saying, I want to be part of a community. I want to meet people that are like me and to work together, as though, that's what that's what I was doing. I didn't really think of QStack as pioneering anything. I thought of it as, I could not find other queer people on Substack when I was first writing. And I was finding lots of people. I made, lots of good friends and stuff like that, but there were just, where are all the queers? And so through these really, labor intensive keyword searches and stuff, I realized what a need there was, and the fact that there is no demographic categories on Substack. There's no just for women, for BIPOC, for Asian, for
And I
gay or
think that's
queer or
why
whatever.
all of these stacks just naturally present themselves because there isn't. That's really why Top and Fiction even came into being is because the fiction section was not fiction and I don't think still to this day, if you went to the Discovery to look and see
Right.
who's at the top, it's not, you
It's
know.
not actual fiction,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
bestsellers, and it's like, okay, I get it, you know what I mean? But I don't know. It's like I'm here for the community. I'm not here to just be a fanboy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to follow, the biggest names, and so I don't know what Substack's, end goal is in the way
Right.
that they
And I was honestly
present these
just
things, but
tired of people complaining, myself included, about the fact that it just didn't exist. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna just stop and never go there again. I don't need to see what the heck they're doing over there. I'm just gonna create my own damn list. And instead of waiting for someone else to come up with a stack for it, I was like, you know what? Let's just create our own top and fiction. And like you, to this day, I'm still discovering, I'm still going out and finding the unfindable, mining the mines, thinking if you think that we found all the fiction writers, think again because I
yeah,
mean, I've my list is almost at 750 different unique fiction writers that have been on Top and Fiction for the first time.
yeah,
I'm out there and I'm looking for them on a daily basis, and the fact that I'm still able to present to you, like, brand new names on the list every week, let alone every month,
yeah,
every week,
yeah,
I'm finding 5 to 10 new fiction writers. Now whether or not you're being consistent, and you're out there to
mhm,
so that you can grow, that's on you. I can only do but so much. I can share you to the thousands of subscribers that I have, and they can go find you, and you better have fiction written because if you don't, sure, you're not gonna get any subscribers. I can't help you beyond that, right? There's only so much you can do. Like I need you to do a little bit more yourself. But I will be, coming to you for the Books We Love Club. Now I have to find from my many books that I love, find one that I really, really,
yes,
really love.
exciting.
Yeah, I already have two in mind, two of my go-to faves. So I might have to have a battle to see which one wins out of the two that I'm thinking of immediately. Um, but I will definitely do that. And anyone else, you guys,
Yeah,
if
you
you
know,
have a book that you love, let them know.
It would be super fun and super cool to do an edition where you actually have two favorites. So I don't know if you ever read, this is one of the early kind of things I did was to say, who's better. I think I only did two of them. One was Dolly Parton versus Cher.
Ooh, ooh.
One
I
was
think I think that's a taste, that's a preference thing because while I love Dolly, and please, nobody hate on me right now with what I'm about to say. She is an acquired sound. I don't think I can hear an entire Dolly album. Like I can hear a hit here and a song here, but a little reprieve in between because of the tone of her voice. But Cher, I mean, I could listen to Cher all day. But
oh
again,
sure, of course.
but it doesn't mean I don't love Cher more than Dolly. It's just like I don't know that I could do an entire like 40-minute album of Dolly. Like I need a little break in between.
She's got a little bit churchy. She's got a little bit churchy in her older years, if I'm being
I
honest.
mean, but she's an icon. Give me,
She is.
a little
Well,
Dolly,
Cher
not too
won.
much.
Sure, Cher won. But the way that it got started was, you remember those Snickers commercials with Aretha
Uh-huh.
Franklin and Liza Minnelli?
Yeah.
So I decided to do Aretha versus Liza, and it was kind of a hoot. So if you wanted to do, like a smackdown between your two favorite classics, I'd love it if people were, like with Eleanor doing the, I hate Ulysses. If you wanted to do that as well, I'm totally open to, new ideas
Yeah,
and books.
I just might do that because they are they couldn't be more different antithesis to each other. One, the author is deceased. The other one, the author is very much alive and still writing. So it would be like
But
two total polar opposites for the books.
I would insist that you pick a winner though.
Oh,
That's the one. Yeah.
I'd have to actually come down to pick a
No
winner.
waffling.
Okay. And they both have a movie based off the book. I'm just
Oh,
thinking right
okay.
now, like they both do. One of them, and I love both of the movies as well. It's one of those where the movies follow the book to the letter type of situation.
Oh,
So, just
good.
to pique
Okay.
everyone's interest, I won't say what the two are. You'll have to wait for my post to come out. I won't even tell you a sneak peek. Um, but anyway, yeah, so I think people need to come to you with what books they really love. Because one of the things I wanted to say was not just the book, but I feel like you find out a lot about the person who picked it because
Oh, yeah.
it says a lot about you if what that book is that you really love, like what kind of
Yeah.
person you are, what kind of sometimes what kind of stories you're trying to tell in your work. Like it really can be very revealing, to and
Mm,
very personal when you say what book you really love. Um,
yeah. Yeah.
it can say a
Absolutely.
lot. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have. You just interviewed Sally Reed
yeah.
recently. Sally's doing the next one.
Oh,
Next
okay.
this month, actually in June. It's Cold Comfort Farm by Stella Gibbons, which is now almost 100 years old or whatever. And I'd heard about it, but I didn't know anything about it. And so now, as Sally's been talking about it, and we've been going back and forth or whatever, now I'm like, ooh, I'm super excited to read this, and I can't wait to
Right.
read. I've got her submission in my inbox, and I haven't with the publishing and everything. I need to look at it this week or over the week. It's
Yeah.
going out in 2.
Awesome. Awesome. I can't wait to read that and to read what else you have coming up. So yeah, so congratulations on your release
Thank you. Thank
yesterday.
you.
I'm sure you have a dozen other interviews. One thing, okay, before you go, because I am going to hopefully, fingers crossed, be self-publishing a collection of my short stories. I've been wanting to do this for years now, and this is going to be the year that I really do it. And so one question that I had, because I noticed that you have been doing all of these interviews back to back to back. So how did that come about for Lamb? Like did people hear that you had a book release and ask you the way I asked you, do you mind if I interview you about it? Or did you want to do a what do they call it? Not a tour, but like do a tour of your book and so you're doing all
Yeah.
of these different interviews with different people to basically promote it. So how
Yeah.
did you get to like whipping out your calendar and saying, "Boy, I've got so many people who want to, you know, So I
It was a combination, really. It wasn't like, people certainly weren't knocking down my door or whatever, but it was a combination of, people like, for example, I had done one with Ben Wakeman when he finished up Departures, his most recent serial novel, and he had asked me, and he had also asked Julie Gabrielli and Kim Warner to do it. And so he ended up doing one with the two of them, and then he and I did one. And so I was just like, well, when Lamb comes out, will you do one with me? You know,
right,
and then also because it was a natural fit with Gail Marlene Schwartz and with Kim Warner again. Because we've been working on this movie project, I shouldn't say movie, it's a short film called Unsung, which will be premiering this month and for Pride Month or whatever. And that'll be the last weekend. So there will be more details about that. But Gail is in the film, and Kim and I are co-directors. So it was a natural fit also when we discovered that Gail's book also was coming out on the same day. And we were like, well, we need to do it all together. And the themes are all interlocked, about talking about, men and what's wrong with men, and that sort of thing.
well,
It was a
written that
combination of,
interview.
yeah, and it's just posted. Yeah, yeah, we did it yesterday. And it's just posted on all three of our Substacks. So it was a combination of it happened organically, and I went out looking for things, and I had Jeff Yamaguchi, who's watching this right now. He's a wonderful marketing assist, guy, and he helped me. He helped me line up some other ones. So actually, there was a podcast that came online last week, and I didn't even realize it that I did, called Lost Spaces. And so I'll be putting out a post or a note or something about that, which it came out and I didn't even realize it. I've been so busy, and I've got another one, and Jeff helped me line those up. So anyway, so it's been, a concerted effort to do a tour because I live in Spain, and it wasn't like I could go, I don't even have a driver's license. So, it's not like I could even go to the US and rent a car and drive around to different places there. So this
Right.
is my this
Well,
is my online tour.
yeah, it's great to have this be something that you could easily do now, where I feel like it wasn't something that was so easy to just have these kind of online talks with anyone in the world. You can now do that, and you could do a tour like this, or, I'm hoping in 2026 to do a summit where we're just gonna have it's all gonna be online, and it's just gonna be a
Ooh,
bunch of us, of the community coming together and just having different panels and workshops and a bunch of
fun.
stuff. I'm hoping to do a fiction tournament and really have blood and cutthroat stuff happening. You never know. I wanna do it
It's a,
gladiator style with the thumbs up or thumbs down. Is awesome. Blood will be
sounds
shed on this
delightful.
one. So do you wanna be on the bracket then? Can I
Absolutely,
can I
absolutely. I'll be,
can I
yeah.
interest you in this Hunger Games gladiator style fiction writing?
I'll
And
put
and
on
so
my I'll put on my pony play gear, and I'll be the horse John Carrot, the chariot.
so, but yeah, so I just, the reason why I wanted to ask, like, do you have any upcoming? Are you slowing, winding it down now, all these interviews and things that you're doing, or, um,
Yeah, a
are
little
there
bit.
there's still a bunch more to come?
There's a few things. Yeah, I'm talking about a few things. Yeah, I do need a tiny little break just for a few days or whatever. But I'm gonna keep, pushing and keep trying to, to get word out about Lamb. Obviously, being self-published, it doesn't have the marketing machine that the big publishers or even some of the smaller presses have, with that built-in audience. So everything is, is my efforts and Jeff's efforts and the efforts of people like you and everybody who's been so welcoming and inviting me to talk with them on their own podcast. It's a group effort. It really is. I mean, Substack is a group effort. So it's wonderful that we have this now. And as Rita just said, press junket. I've been able to do my press junket almost, not exclusively, but significantly on Substack. Where would you have done that even 5 years ago?
Right. I mean, I don't think it could have been done on like YouTube or I don't
No,
even know where
no.
else. Like it just wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have had the same vibe. You wouldn't have had like 31 people in the room, like unless you already had a built-in audience, right? So like there's so many little things that we don't even think about that we in many ways take for granted.
Yeah.
But before I let you go, I always ask every person who comes on, what are we expecting next?
What are
Obviously,
we?
you're going to be, like what are you serializing next? What's next in the world of Mr. Troy Ford that we
I'm
can
not
look forward
sure about serializing, but I do still have my first book that I wrote that I submitted to agents and that, kind of I just sort of set aside when I started Substack because I kind of threw myself into getting, my newsletters going and first it was my personal newsletter, then it became QStack, and then it became Lamb and serializing that, and I knew that Lamb was going to go from serial to self-published. So the next thing up I think is going back to my first novel, Waterspout, and maybe taking one more crack at editing and revising that and then making that my
your next
second book.
published book?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. It's a little bit more of a traditional narrative, but still kind of like a coming of age of a troubled youth. Things I know a lot about.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you had a troubled youth.
I
You
did.
look like a
I
guy
did.
with troubles.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Okay. Definitely, that's me. Okay, thank you for being here. This
Thank
will
you.
go up in a couple of hours. I just need to wait for, Substack to send me the video so I can attach it to the post that'll be coming out later today. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
I will
And thanks
reach out
for all of you. Thanks
about
for everyone for coming in.
yeah, I'll reach out to you about the book I love and how to make that happen. Um And yeah, so I'm really excited about that. Thank you so much.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
I'm sure you all know Mr. Troy Ford already, and if you don't, go find out who he is, subscribe, buy his book, Lamb, that came out yesterday. And yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you. It's lovely.
All right.
Thanks. Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Bye.